let's get to our guest because the chat is blowing up.
Okay.
They know he has a pipe and they aspire to his mustache.
Yes.
What's his name, Eric?
His name is Aaron Figueroa. I think I was practicing this in my head after asking him before the podcast started to see if I got it correct. I got it right. You are the author and illustrator of the Life and Times of Christian Weston Chandler. That's correct. Both author and illustrator, or just author?
Both.
Okay, we want to make sure we got that correct. How did you come to this topic of Christian Weston Chandler? And audience, please forgive us. We are unfamiliar with this person. So you have to go through the bio.
You guys are on for a ride. Okay. Essentially, Christian Weston Chandler is the most documented person in history. And I know that's kind of like that's a big claim to say, but like he honestly, we have like a day-to-day log for like 20 plus years of his life, ever since he was discovered on the internet. And basically, probably the first e-celeb, it's a first of many. This individual was the first brony. This individual was like, you would consider like the first incel in a way. And it all has to deal with like the culture of the early internet and how it was just a completely different environment, and how pop culture and the internet and this side of like American culture kind of transformed this individual that caused like a complete tragedy in this person's life. So there's a lot of events. It gets really crazy. It's like one of the most insane, like completely true stories that I know of. And that's why I was interested in it, because of how out there it was, kind of hard to believe,
Yeah.
So like, you start off at the very early childhood of this person. Like, was that documented as well, or was that just something you had to get through like different means of research?
So that is documented, but it's not in that much detail. This individual, Christian, is actually turned 40 this year. So he, now as she, is a millennial actually. And there's a lot of stuff that I'll be discussing about this individual that will be like quite shocking. But yeah, essentially, when it came to their childhood, it was basically, I have a lot, there's things here and there that we know, like there's actually articles. This person actually was on the news in their hometown of Virginia, in Charlottesville. And we have a good amount of media, but what I had to do when I formed the first issue, which covers their childhood up into high school, I kind of had to fill in the gaps here and there to be able to tell a more coherent story. But essentially, the story I told is accurate and pretty true to the actual events that happened. So
that's great.
Great.
And how did you get, like, you had access to his childhood sort of stories?
So so essentially there's a whole, it's called Wikipedia, CWC, then pedia. You can look it up anytime you type in Christian. You'll see there's a whole entire website that's dedicated to like every single aspect of Chris's life, from the time they were born up until now. Every single event, every single article, there's like thousands of photos, there's a ton of videos. This person would go like essentially on the internet and have like vlogs, like very early 2000s, and interact with like people on YouTube, on 4chan, not for the better. It made this individual's life really horrible, and a lot of events happened. Were pretty shocking because of it. But yeah, essentially, if you type that in, there's actually one thing that I do highly recommend for anyone who doesn't know the story of Christian, that there is a it's more than that. It's like 63-part documentary. Each part is like an hour long. It's extremely well done, and it gets into like every aspect of this individual's life. What they do, the art they made, who they were, their family members, everything. So it's very fascinating stuff.
Oh, cool. That's great that you have so much source material.
Yeah, it makes it easy. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it in the first place, because there's really so much source material that's related to pop culture, and he's a comic book creator. He has like you know, I would think like 13 issues out of something called Sonichu, and you can actually pull up an image of Chris Chan's artwork, and essentially the comic book is a combination of different like characters and pop culture. By the way, I gotta this will make more sense. So, and as you read in the actual comic, this person has autism. And that had a huge effect on their life, and it had a huge effect on why the internet was able to get a hold of this individual and why they are so famous today. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, the combination Pikachu and Sonic the Hedgehog, hence Sonichu.
Yeah. Essentially, even though Chris Chan thinks that like that character belongs to him when it doesn't, because it's like obviously it's two characters. But when it comes to certain comic book creators, it's fascinating because with Chris, their OCs are very, very important to them. Their original characters are what makes the story so interesting. It's kind of like a insight into who this person is, because in the comics, like Chris would actually like kind of tell his life story through these characters, and how Chris views like life when it comes to like religion and politics and racial things. And it's very, very fascinating how this person would interpret. Basically, it's like a story of like a millennial that never grew up past the age of 12, and how that had an effect trying to live in a changing world and being an adult and everything like that. So
interesting. Are you gonna connect in future issues? Will you connect to his comic book?
Yeah, eventually it has to come up to a certain point, because issue 1 is childhood, issue 2 will deal with like the high school years, and then from there going into the college years. And in college is when 4chan really found out this individual and like completely changed their life for the worse, as I mentioned always. Essentially it's going to come up to the point to where I kind of have to figure out how to interweave the plot of like the comic and his fantasies and everything like that, and the individual themselves. And let me preface this like so Chris Chan is a she now, but just for the sake of like non-confusion, and in the story I'm mostly talking about Chris Chan as a male. I'll just use like male pronouns for when in the story they identified as a male.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make that clear, so no confusion or anything like that.
We can refer to them as they, you know.
Wherever their preferred pronouns is. Are.
For sure.
Also, I just want to shout out to the chat. If your internet is not working, maybe unplug it and plug it back in. I'm just saying. I don't know.
Is that like a famous Chris Chan thing where like my internet's not working? They would say that a lot.
No, but there's a famous Chris Chan quote where the father, who's a main character, probably the main character with Chris Chan in the comic, like has to deal with like the increasing chaos of their life as like trolls get involved with their life and 4chan and whatnot. And he yells out, "I'm going to cut the internet down," because like the internet completely destroyed their lives. So maybe they're referring to that. I don't know. I don't have the chat pulled up. So
yeah, probably is. Cool.
Couple things in regards to the comic itself. For the most part, you keep it black and white-ish using blue scale. But there are a couple of times you choose to go into color. Is there a specific reason for that?
Yeah. So essentially the reason why I do that is because well, it's set in the 80s and 90s, and there's a certain aesthetic and feel to nostalgia, and even people my age. So I'm like, I was born in 1990, so I'm 31 now, and there's a certain nostalgia for the past, and that's why like movies are constantly being remade. and not only like movies, but like video games and characters and everything like that. The Sonic 2 movie came out recently, and it did extremely well because it's all based on nostalgia. And when there's like a burst of nostalgia, I wanted the feeling and mood of like turning to color and adding the backgrounds of like the designs of the 80s and 90s and stuff like that. It makes it more interesting, and it pops out how important the culture was at the time to Chris. And not only that, but how like they like had emotional attachments to certain objects in their life. You know, so that's what the idea was behind having it like spurts of color here and there.
It's just a cool artistic interpretation. I just want to know the reasoning behind that.
It's a cool choice. Yeah.
Yeah. Does Christian know you're doing this, or have you like let them know, or because is that
so here's warning to anyone listening to this and don't know who Christian is. Christian is in a mental institution right now. They actually were charged and they went to jail. And essentially what happened is that Christian was charged with incest. The mother, that's the actual character in the book, and this is going to be a huge thing, someone reading the book and getting to this point. The mother became very senile and old, and because of the mental state of Christian and the way like the internet completely, like a lot of trolls and a lot of like pretty much evil individuals got a hold of like a mentally ill person's life, it eventually led to where Christian actually raped his mom, who was 85 at the time. And the way it was huge thing, it happened like a year ago, and I was making this comic before them, and no one saw it coming. It came out of nowhere. There's like text logs about it. She's very, very like open about like discussing what happened and thinking that it was a good thing. And basically like Christian's mom's like senile, doesn't even know where she's at. And basically that's kind of where the story ends, which is like extremely shocking, knowing like the character and starting off from issue 1 and knowing everything. Basically, there are disturbing events in Christian's life, but there's a lot of like there's a lot of humor involved with it. And when it ended off at that certain point recently, like it was just extremely shocking. The father's dead. They have no family left, and that person is in a insane asylum, which this is one of the reasons why it's like really controversial tackling this subject. And I get a lot of hate like on I get a lot of hate on like Reddit and when I post my stuff, or Facebook, or even on Instagram, because a lot of people are they don't like that I'm covering this subject. But I think for many different reasons, it's an important thing to discuss, especially with how Christian's life ties into the many aspects of modern culture and everything like that. So yeah, basically they're extremely mentally ill. We don't know what's going on. She's in a mental institution right now in Virginia.
Okay.
And the trial's coming up soon, so we don't know if they're going to be like homeless or because they don't have any family left. So
or if they'll go to jail, right? Or
there's a debate about that. Some people are like, should this person go to jail, or should this person be in an insane asylum? Because they became like so mentally ill that like they were starting, and this was makes it fascinating actually, like tackling this subject in a comic. Christian's original OCs, Sonic Chu and Magic-chan, all these characters that essentially that Chris hold in such importance in their life, essentially Christian started hallucinating them in real life. And the trolls, there was a group of trolls that on the internet that got them to actually hallucinate to the point to where like they were causing this individual to do horrible things because like they were getting them involved with like this made up lore that they were creating. And it's a huge thing. There's a ton of videos on YouTube. There's a ton of people who follow this. but it's a very disturbing story. But
Yeah.
there's always some aspect about it. Well, not near the end, but like early on, there's always like some kind of like almost like this dark humor, hilarious events that happen because this individual is not a good person.
Oh.
Even way before this happens, like Christian, and this is something that a lot of people are interested in the comic. When am I gonna get to like all the funny stuff and everything like that? You know, it's like, well, I got to show this individual and their family as real people before I get into like the stuff of them trying to go around like getting kicked out of the mall because they're like they have like a sign they made with their characters about finding a boyfriend freed girl, and they would like try to talk to women, and it was just like a lot of hilarious, like very cringy bits. But like this person has done a lot of horrible things. Like they're very racist. They were very like homophobic, and it's what part of the irony is that this person was extremely homophobic, and then come to find out that this person was trans later on. So it was kind of those, there's a lot of ironies and very interesting twists and turns involved in their life. So it was a very hard topic to touch. So I tried to be as honest and as balanced as possible when approaching the subject. So
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Do you said that people are against you covering this topic in the first place? Um, can you talk about that a little more? We haven't had anybody on this podcast who's had haters or like or
I
like
just released my first issue, and yeah, I have a good amount of haters.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about like the controversy behind it, or
just with you personally, like what kind of pushback have you come across?
so a lot of it's based so there's two like different types of people involved in the lore of Christian. There is, they call them white knights, which are people who are like you can't essentially like you can't you shouldn't be like making any art off of this. Like people are upset that anyone that makes like a documentary or videos or whatever, for some reason they think that like Christian is a historical figure, and some people got upset that I called him a historical figure. I'm like, yes, that it's a person in history that millions of people know and that tells a lot about our culture. And some people don't want to even touch it, so they get upset. They think that I'm trying to get money off of it. Now that's the difficulty of this subject, that a lot of people are comparing my work to my friend Dahmer, which is similar in the way that it covers in an almost comedic way, very satirical way, an individual that's pretty despicable, and a topic that's like pretty large and whatnot. So essentially, it's very tricky, and there's a lot of people who, there's on the opposite hand, there's individuals that are completely like they want me to make jokes about like the rape that happened, and just like it's stuff like I mean like they think it's funny, you know, to kind of like they're basically the trolls of Christian. They're called weens. So there's the weens and there's the white knights, and those are the people I have to fight against. And like I'm like stagely in the middle, that I'm like, okay, because like it's huge. Like there's a lot of different types of fans, what makes it even more fascinating to tackle this subject. And I'm like in the middle, I'm trying to explain, okay, I'm trying to come at this as trying to tell a biography of a comic book artist, because Christian, the reason why they became famous, because they are a comic book artist, and trying to tell the story behind it in a very, very respectful way. But there's been a lot of controversy and people are pretty upset. But the thing is that it doesn't matter like what kind of like social or political affiliation that one might have, if they understand the story. Because a lot of people who get upset just hear like, oh, he raped his mom, don't talk about it. If they understand the story and the individual and the family and the history behind this individual and why it's important, why it's interesting, it doesn't matter if they're like liberal or conservative or whatever, they have a respectful attitude, they understand what I'm doing, and they get excited about the project. So I find that very interesting, that like that it's not so much about like a certain like social affiliation or the individuals behind it. I think anyone can be interested in the story or understand what I'm trying to do, but they have to understand that there's more to the individual than someone who like horrifically committed incest and now is in an insane asylum. Like there's much more to the individual than that,
Yeah. Chat has contributed that there are Weens, White Knights, Trolls, Christorians, Normies, and those are the main categories.
Yeah, of Christian fans, and there's a lot of Christian fans. Like the documentaries has like millions and millions and millions of views.
Yeah.
Every time there's a new episode, there's like almost like 500,000 views.
Wow. What's a derf? You've been called a derf. Just a heads up.
Durf is the author of My Friend Dahmer.
Oh, okay.
So that's a lot of people that kind of like are like I get that comparison the most to his work. And there's a couple other if you guys like eventually get into like the artistic influences behind it, there's a couple other things that people have compared it to as well. And there's influences directly. Now Durf, I don't have like I haven't read his work. I saw the movie and I really do want to read the book, but it's not, even though like it seems very close, I don't have like direct influence coming from that individual. So
I see. Yeah, to be honest, like I didn't think of this as a comedic comic, really.
Yeah.
It's very much a biography.
It's very much biography. There's very dark, but you also mentioned that like there is going to be humor brought into it. There's going to be dark humor. Can you expand upon what humor, like how you approach humor in this? Just because, as you talk about, there's a lot of serious subjects in that. It's kind of hard to be humorous with this, but it's also kind of like a necessary release valve. Like, also, what's your history with humor and everything like that?
So the way I approach the humor is I try to directly just tell the situation. The beauty about Christian's life is that all you have to do is explain and tell what they did. And if you ever watch videos on this individual, they're in a category called low-cal. A low-cal is basically someone that embarrasses themselves on purpose. Usually they're racist, homophobic, or they have issues with women or something like that, which Christian is all of those things combined. And people egg them on for more jokes and whatnot. So essentially all I have to do is tell the story straight. And there is already an absurdist dark humor tone that's present in the material. Mm-hmm. Personally, for me, humor, one of the reasons why I picked this project to begin with as my first comic and something that I want to continue for a series is because that humor for me has like a very special place in my heart, specifically absurdist dark humor, and Christian is just filled with that. And I think the best humor is not necessarily when someone's telling a joke, but they just show the situation, and the situation is so absurd, you just can't help laugh. Even if it's a really fucked up situation, you still laugh at it, because of how absurd the situation is and how true and real it is to either people or like situations you've had before in life. And to me, that's important to bring on the comic. And once it gets like really, there's a few comedic things here or there if you're like a fan and you see it. But once it gets to the point of like college, which will be in a few issues, that's when it goes, that shit off the walls. Like it gets like really hilarious. It gets like really absurd. And this his interaction with the internet and how the internet, like all these people all over the world just like get into his life and just like destroy it, not on his own fault. It's not like they came and like sent bombs to his house or whatever. It's just Christian would respond in a very negative and toxic way to these people that caused more trouble for him and his family. And his family they're not good people either. They're racist and stuff like that as well. So it's one of those things is that like, yes, it's horrible that's happening, but the person is horrible themselves. So it's like, you feel like you're allowed to laugh, which is kind of the beauty of the subject material, even though you're like, should I be laughing? I love tackling stuff like that, where it's like, should I be laughing? But you laugh anyway. It feels wrong or dangerous to kind of do so,
Yeah. But you're obviously not punching down. I guess that would be where the criticism would be correct, is if this person had no defense. But it sounds like they do. It sounds like they're, like they're an adult and they made choices. It's
difficult because like this person has autism, and it's like, are they completely responsible or aware of their surroundings. And there's a debate that some people say no and some people say yes. And the autism is pretty bad, even though this individual passed high school and has a college degree, believe it or not. The thing is, like, Christian has no social awareness around about their surroundings. In fact, there's whole entire sagas where they have made up girlfriends that the trolls make up for at the time him to send nudes and like sex videos and stuff like that. And Christian would fall for it all the time. And there's a debate, did Christian know? And that was the only interaction that he would have. So he would play into that, even though like he knew that it was destroying their life, but they didn't care because it was the only interaction they had, or their autism was so severe they didn't know. It's like a debate, and people go back and forth along the topic, and that's something that I have to play with eventually when I get to those issues and those topics, you know, about like what is real, what is not, you know, the intentions behind different events that happen. You know. So,
yeah, they're called trolls for a reason, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah, and you're obviously not making fun of Chris, but the like situation. Yeah.
I'm not like. There's a lot to make fun of about Chris, and you know, I might point towards that way when it comes to him being racist or homophobic, because that's just the way I operate.
Yeah.
You know, but like you don't have to do that. You don't have to push anything. You just tell like the story the way it is, and it's automatically like a joke. It's automatically hilarious. That's the beauty of the kind of humor that I like, to where you necessarily don't have to punch down. Just tell it straight up, and you laugh, you get upset, you know, that's up to you as a reader, you know.
One thing about this first issue is it actually was like heavy. I mean, it was like pretty. There's child abuse in this. You know, there's like the sense of, and you really get that sense and frustration of like this child who's not understood, and like and you do a great job. I mean, the pacing panel to panel is so good when he just wants that. When they take away the cow, was it the monkey? When they take the monkey, the pacing of that page is so good. You really feel that, like the adults are like, why won't he talk? And you know, he just wants that monkey, you know.
That one girl that he hangs out with tries to poison her, and then his dad bribes her to like, look after her, and she still fails to do that even. I mean, it's like he's clearly then he's beat by his teachers and the principal. I mean, clearly he's not had the best childhood, no matter how you look at it.
It's very difficult because, well, I have to preface this saying that these events, and I had to explain that like at the very beginning of the comic, not to harass people, whatever, because these are real people. This is something that Christian has explained in their life that's happened to them. Like the heaviest scene is going to be the abuse scene with the principal. Now, the thing is that we don't know exactly if that happened. Now, according to the parents dragging them out of the school and having issues with the school, and Christian saying that that's the most traumatic event of their life, like, because they didn't know how to handle like autistic students in the 90s. Like, to be honest, I didn't know what autism was until like 2008, 2010. You just never really heard about it that much, or like it was never really talked about. And
there weren't advocates. There definitely weren't as many advocates.
I think they first started diagnosing like individuals, and especially like Christians in the South, so they're not gonna fucking know what the fuck is up when it comes to like mental health, especially in the 90s when it comes to something like that. You know, they just thought like, oh, that's a weird person or whatever. That's part of the struggle of Christian in their life, and having people not knowing like that this person does have a mental issue. And but yeah, that's something that like when I cover these events, it's like, it's strong. There's a strong possibility that Christian was abused, because a lot of people that have issues like that do get abused in a lot of different aspects, because you know they're not able to respond, they can't talk, or they act up a lot. As you can see in the comic, Christian acts up a lot, you know, like because like he was screeching like a lot, like up until maybe the age of like 10 or 8 or whatever. That's how he would like communicate to people, was just like screeching and being almost violent, you know, in the way he would interact.
Yeah.
Which caused a lot of issues.
Right. He couldn't communicate. Yeah.
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 I mean, as I'm sure he was just trying to communicate, and he didn't know how properly, or not properly, but other way the people that other people would find acceptable.
So, you know, we are a comic creator podcast.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about your method.
Your background
yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everything like that. So we should probably talk about that.
Yeah. If you don't mind.
Talk about some very heavy stuff.
Yeah, not at all. So, what specifically, you want to know my background or?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, just like what drew you to create comics?
So this is very polished. This comic is very polished. So you said it's your first
comic.
one.
This is absolutely amazing. Like this is.
No, thank you. Well, that's because it took me so damn long to get the thing out there. It's almost been like a year and a half.
Okay.
And part of my process was that like I would draw like 4 pages and then I would go back. It's like, this isn't good enough.
Okay.
So I would redraw it. That happened like 3 times. And it was insane because a lot of people that I know, a lot of my friends and everything like that, it's like, just get it done, just get it done. And I'm like, no, this is my first thing that I'm putting out there. Christianity is a big topic. It's something that is important to me and to like millions of people right now. I want to make sure that it's done right. And I had to refine my style more and more until I had something that was, in my view, I would read this. Because I know a lot of comic book creators, they just like chuck whatever and they're like, well, I just got to continue making and hopefully I get better. It's like, well, if I have to spend like a week on a page, I have to spend a week on a page because I got to have a consistent, like good style, like with it. And cool. I know it's kind of late though, because I'm 31 years old, you know. It's kind of late to be putting out your first issue.
I don't know. What have you done before? What's your what was your last?
What's your CV?
Yeah.
Interview us. You're interviewing. We're interviewing now for a job. Or you interview us.
Did you do jazz bass? You know.
No, I wish I did. But essentially my my background is that I went to college for animation, and I want to be able to tell my own stories because I want to be a filmmaker. But the thing about it is, to be a filmmaker, you have to have like a group of dedicated people around you that's willing to kind of work with you for nothing until you're able to make the stuff.
People hate you. I can tell. People just despise you. No, we talk about that.
I can get on people's nerves.
We talk about that a lot on here. Like that, this is like filmmaking, but without the money.
Yeah. That's essentially what appealed to me about comics. And I fell in love with comics at an early age. So I'm 31 years old. So I am the very, very last generation that actually had comics to where where they would sell magazines, or like they at this supermarket, like every supermarket had like a row, like a whole rack full of like Marvel, DC, Image. And this was, I remember even as a little kid, 4 or 5 years old, I was always asking for my parents so I can get an issue or whatever, even if I didn't know how to read or whatever. There was something that I think with every comic book creator, you see like a comic and you fall in love with it. The way it looks, the way the story's being told, the colors, the artwork and everything like that. Yeah. And for me personally, I fell in love with it. Then I would do comics. I would just redraw Spider-Man panels. Spider-Man was my favorite superhero when I was a young child. And eventually manga and anime became really big. I would make Bomberman comics to send to my friends, and I would make a lot of different comics of characters that we played in video games and stuff and did it. But I kind of lost that childlike wonderment of creation and everything like that. And when I got to be older, I wanted to do filmmaking. That didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. So eventually I did animation, and the animation industry is more horrible than the filmmaking industry.
Yeah.
Like the amount they pay and the chance of you actually making something, and it's just like not feasible because everything is like farmed out, and unless you're like one of the major people like on the team, you're just it's just really hard to get into.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, just I don't care anymore. I'm just going to go ahead and continue what I loved when I was a child and making comics. And I would do comics here and there. So I have comics, a good amount of comics before I did this one, but I've never released them to the public. And it's something that that I didn't think it was good enough until I created the one recently. And a lot of the comics, I think the first comic that I read that really changed my mind what I could do with comics as opposed to just a superhero thing, as cliche as it sounds, it's Watchmen.
Uh,
Because I remember reading it in high school actually,
yeah.
and I read it, and there's a scene where Night Owl can't get an erection because unless he's in his he has an insecurity, he has to wear the
Yeah.
comic suit, and that's like the infamous. Everyone knows that. It's hilarious, and but as it was shocking to me, not because of the material itself. I was like, they can do that in a comic, like it can get that deep. It was like that's a deep thing to get into. It was like wow, like, and from there I started to read all kinds of comics and started getting like the first series I fell in love with was 8 Ball. 8 Ball has like a pretty big
Yeah.
influence, like the art and everything like that, and a lot of the tone and stuff in my work. Ghost World has a large influence, as you can tell, with my artwork, and I could go on about the different influences. I don't know if you guys want to get into that, but essentially that's my broad history of comics and why I do it now.
Yeah.
But it's something that I'm in love with, and I finally like got the style together to where I'm like,
Yeah.
it's there, and I can start making books now. So
Yeah. You have the drawing chops for sure. You had
Oh,
that.
thank
Yeah,
you.
you had
Yeah.
that going in, which helps. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
You and the fact that you're able to just draw as well. I assume you also did your own lettering as well. Like you can get things done at your pace and get things done how you want to very, very easily, which is a big advantage.
Yeah, I did it. I do the lettering myself, which I was really horrible at lettering. But yeah, there was a lot of aspects that I had to keep on redoing. Lettering was one of them. I had to like go back and redraw this like multiple times. A lot of spelling errors. I'm horrible when it comes to editing stuff. So if anyone in the chat that helped me out, like there might be one or two people that helped me out with the editing process. I would go with my friends. Like I'm a very open person. I was like, okay, tell me what about this is shit. Tell me what I need to like fix. And I'm very open to like I fight with them. Don't get me wrong, but about the process of what I need to improve, like with the comic. But I love how I'm in control of everything, and I can tell the story exactly the way it needs to be told. So
That's so cool. Yeah. And yeah, it's highly stylized for a first comic. It doesn't look like it looks like you've been doing this for a long time, you know.
oh, thank you.
So
I
yeah,
appreciate it.
definitely congratulations on the hard work paying off.
Yeah, well, I guess hopefully it pays off. Right now on the Kickstarter, it's like a little bit over 50%. I still have like 28 days to go,
Oh yeah.
but
Okay.
I'm still pushing because what I want to do is like I just want to see how many people are interested, so that way I can get it printed. But like learning how to print and stuff, that's a whole nother like thing in comics that you have to learn, which is another frustrating aspect about the whole act of creation itself. So,
Yeah.
but
Um,
I love it and hate it at the same time, to be honest. So.
do you draw digitally or is this by hand?
It is. I was originally doing this by hand, but I'm like, I could do it faster digitally. My next issue is going to be drawn completely digitally with elements added in. But essentially, I draw. Pencils are done traditionally,
Okay.
and then I ink in digital. So that way, because
Oh,
I knew I
okay.
had to go back a lot and change the style, make sure they're consistent, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. It is a mixture of both.
Oh, okay. Okay. And then cool. What how did you choose the color? We talk about color too.
We talk about color, but why
yeah.
like instead of just pure
We talked
black and
about
white?
the yeah, I'm in like that blue shade, like the
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. Okay, so originally I actually made the whole entire thing like in full color, but my color theory like sucks. It's horrible. So essentially, like I was like, well, let me pare this down to just like shades. And actually, shout out to Andy Boo Andy. He's the one that actually recommended, because we hang a lot in Discord and everything like that.
Cool.
He recommended, why don't you try like just having like 3, shades of like blue or something. It's like, yeah, you're right. I could do that. And I looked at Don Cloud's work and I was like, well, the tone would match, and it works really well for separating and adding mood, lighting, and stuff like that. Because originally I actually put it at black and white, but I'm like, okay, this is a comic that feeds off nostalgia. I had to have a little bit of color.
Yeah.
Because I originally did it black and white because I'm a huge fan of Love and Rockets, and I love the way they handle humor and serious tone in Love and Rockets, and that's something that like I wanted to initially do, but my composition and drawing skills aren't good enough to just do a solid black and white comic. Sometimes you can cheat a little bit with like different tones of color. So essentially, that's how it evolved.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it works. Yeah, I get the nostalgia thing. It's like that sepia sort of. Cool. Eric?
It looks cool. I've got really no other questions.
It looks cool.
It looks cool. I mean, what else to say? Does anybody on Twitch have any questions?
There was there's quite a lot of chat today.
Yeah, a lot of people like Christian.
Yeah. If it's a character way back in history that did insane stuff, wouldn't it be fine to make media about it? Yeah. So, is there any difference between historical characters and like current characters? I think what's interesting is like, especially with documentaries right now, they're like being produced before the trial even starts on some of these bad people. So it's kind of
Now, some people got upset at the Tiger King for the same reason they got upset at Christian. But Tiger King, what it does glorify the characters, because in that documentary, like there's a lot of stuff they said that was like really fucked up, really racist and everything like that. I mean, they're a bunch of redneck, pieces of shit in Oklahoma killing tigers and using that for profit. But like
they also rampant drug use to take advantage of people.
Yeah, but they didn't put that in there because they wanted to make them more likable. That's not my intention at all. Like, I do like I think you should sympathize with anyone, regardless of like, what they did or their background, because they were once a child, and Christian was once a child, and I believe to better add for the story, for like character development and for purposes of humor later on, it makes more sense for me the way I approach it, just to kind of treat it as respectfully as possible, but to show like how messed up these people are.
That makes sense. Yeah, outsider perspective. Yeah. I'm laughing because the next question is, why do you still live with your parents as a 31-year-old man?
Okay, I live with my parents because I'm a cartoonist and I'm poor. So you combine this default, being a cartoonist means that you just don't have any money. And so right now I actually enjoy the position of living with my parents, as long as I get to make comics. I enjoy the fact that I'm not dating anyone, because I get to like just fully focus on comics. So that is why a 31-year-old man, because he wants to be able to put out some badass comics in a relatively decent time frame. So
yeah, there's your answer. Only here for Arson Bjork. I don't know what that means. Wait, didn't Bjork make that music video where she's like, there's fire around her?
One of them.
Am I remembering?
Yeah. She also made like stuff where she was blind. I mean, and yeah.
I like her music sometimes.
I do too.
Yeah. She was in The Northman recently. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I read that. I read that. Did you see that?
Oh, I saw it 2 nights ago with a couple of friends. We took some subsistence before going, and it's quite a trip. It's a beautiful film. It's very good. I highly recommend it.
People really liked it, so yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's no, it's Arson Bjork. No relation to Bjork.
Oh, okay.
Arson Bjork. I don't know if am I saying that correctly? Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know.
This is great content too. Uh,
Solid. Our best work ever.
yeah. Cool. Aaron, did you have anything to plug? You have a Instagram called TrashComix.
Yeah, I have a.
Starter.
So I have an Instagram, TrashComix. TrashComix, comics with an X, not a C.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
I got a
and
I got a
S, yeah.
Kickstarter, an S,
Yeah.
and I got a Kickstarter going up. All you have to do is search Chris Chan, 2 separate words, Chris Chan, on Kickstarter, and you'll see it come up. It's doing pretty well right now, a little bit over halfway, like I mentioned before, and hopefully we can meet that goal and get everyone's books shipped out so I can work on issue 2 as soon as possible. It's interesting being in between that time period between releasing a book,
Yeah.
selling it, and then starting work on the next one because you want to change a lot of things. You have a new approach and everything like that. But essentially, yeah, those are the places you can check me out. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, good luck with your Kickstarter. It's definitely a book that we hope gets supported,
Yeah.
and it's a great story. And you're telling it well, I think. Yeah.
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 Hopefully
Yeah.
I'm not being just a troll.
Right. I hope so too, but I found
hope
it
so,
very
too.
entertaining. So
Yeah,
Well, thank you.
it was definitely a read that you get through in one go because it's a deep and heavy and well paced read.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you guys so much for having me on.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah. Thank you to our Twitch chat. We'll say goodbye.